I'm Gladys Galloway, and I'm delighted to be out here in this beautiful sunshine to share with you pansies on porcelain. The way that I start a program and a design is to look at the plant, and that is so wonderful because we have the actual pansy right in front of us, and that's a real treat for all of you, I'm sure. So very quickly, I will sketch a pansy, then I'll show you sketches I have already been doing out here, and then a quick watercolor before we go into the studio. So right now, I will show you the progression and the way that the pansy actually grows. This is a little tent, and in that little tent is a little pistil. Sometimes they are red, sometimes they are green. I know you can't see it in this one, but this one happens to have a little red one. At the bottom of the tent, there is a petal which is really roughly. Sometimes we call it a chin. And then the second petal goes at the top of the tent. The third petal overlaps on the other side. And then we have those gorgeous top petals, which again overlap to the top of the tent and ruffle like that. At the side of the tent, we have the little whiskers. At the bottom of the tent, we have little whiskers also. So this is a very simple little drawing of a pansy. In back of the tent is where the stem comes, so we could kind of come in like that. They're short, stubby, and quite heavy. And then from that, you can have your leaves come out, which are kind of roughly, and grow in clumps of 3, 5s, 4s, whatever. We'll take a quick look at the bud, and you can see that it has a calyx and sepals, which are very interesting. And I'll show you some of those that I've sketched also. We'll get back down to the actual sketches of the buds here. This is the way that the calyx actually grows. These are the little sepals that cover up the color. Here is another, just as the color is beginning to come out. And this one has more color. So it's more like this one over here. And then we have the back of the pansy where it really shows the calyx as it fits in behind each of those 5 petals. The bottom 3 petals are always the same color. The top 2 may be another color or a different shade of the pansy. So you get many gorgeous combinations, and they are a delightful little flower growing close to the ground, so it makes a nice ground cover too. And they love cool weather, so they do beautifully in Michigan. They really do. This shows the grouping as it actually is growing of some of the shots that you saw when we just before we started drawing. This is how the leaves actually grow on the stem. And here is a close-up of the center showing this pistil. And the little cushion on either side of the center is always white. And when we are working on the porcelain, you'll be able to see how sometimes we come back and make that white with enamel. It's an easy way to do if it gets covered up. But usually we try to wipe out the little cushion while the paint is wet. A nice breeze out here, which shows how the petals tip and turn. And this is another close-up of sketches that I did of the pansies, which you are looking at. Again, showing how large the top petals can be if they're tipped a certain way, the bottom and the side petals, and the whiskers as they are growing. You can see on this yellow one, it's really solid. Just really gorgeous. And on the purple one too. This one has a petal that has tipped. See, so it's not as wide as this one on this side. All of them are roughly, which makes, that's a characteristic of pansies, which is beautiful. And this, of course, is another side view. This one, tipped again. But you can make the ruffles on your pansy. In fact, it's a good idea to take your pen or your pencil, even before you do the watercolor or your porcelain, and actually guide you like this and then come up in between there to show how the ruffles are made. Do the same thing for fabric too. So now let's just very quickly do a pansy. This is just a piece of cardboard that I have taken and put on a piece of white watercolor paper. This is a little off-white, but it's better for you to see. Use masking tape at the top, and then I have another piece of watercolor paper underneath so that I can test my colors. And I use color, probably purple will show up better, so I will just very quickly make a little tent, and that really is yellow, so let's go back and put that yellow in first. And I'll leave that little white cushion on either side. And then think about the shape of my pansy, and I put a little bit of water on there so it wouldn't be too strong and it'll flow. It is watercolor, you know. Nature is so wonderful. You know, the opposite of purple on the color wheel is yellow, and there's that gorgeous little yellow tint right in the center of that purple. Now we'll come out here, make a nice ruffle, flow it back in using the side of my brush rather than the tip of it. And my friend who planted her pansies out here that that's sharing them with us and that we're enjoying so much today, made an excellent choice with her color because she planted her purple and her yellow close together. Okay, there's an overlapping pansy petal, and we'll swing back down here and even leave perhaps some of the white so that it will give us a different shade. You see, I can shade that in there while it's wet. If I went in and got a cup of coffee and came back, that would be dry. But you see, it's an excellent way of capturing that pansy color. Now I can actually look at this in my studio, and I can say, oh, now what color was that pansy? Oh, yes, it was that gorgeous purple. That's it. Now I need to think about letting this dry just a little bit, and then coming back and adding the whiskers. And I think I'm about ready here in a minute. I'll let that dry, and see, when I did that, I needed to get another little bit in here too. And then in back of this, remember in back and underneath is where our shades are. And then I'll use the purple with a little bit of black with it because it was so very dark. And add the whiskers, which come out from the tint. They're like velvet, so if they just were not exactly sharp at the ends, it's even better. It looks more authentic. So now we have our pansy all ready to go. And I think that we have something that will be lovely to look at in the studio, along with our photographs, of course, and the sketches. We should be able to really come up with something very lovely. And I think that's all right now. So let's go back into the studio and paint our pansies on porcelain. Here we are back in the studio to continue our lesson on our adorable little pansies. They are such fun to paint, and I want to just share again with you the sketches which I made out in the field at our friend's home with all the trucks going by. The buds, of course, are so interesting because the calyx and the little sepals fold right around them, and then as it begins to open up, it pushes these little sepals back, and if you turn the pansy over, then it will look like this. And you can see there are 5 sepals because there are 5 petals on the pansy. This is the actual plant, the way that it was growing. So there are lots of stems coming out from groups of leaves. And amazingly, there are usually 3 leaves in a grouping, but sometimes there are 2, and they grow up along the stem as well as near the ground. The leaves themselves, of course, are kind of jagged on the edge here, and the little center is most interesting because it has a little white tint, and then there is this little green oval right at the tip of the tint. Sometimes it has a touch of red. Those that we looked at were green, however, and that was in a yellow area underneath that. And then the sketches again that we continued to make of the plant, of the flower, showing ovals. Remember, if your ovals are going this way, you're going to have this shape of a flower. If it is more round, then you will have one that looks like this. And of course, the petals really overlap, especially the top 2. And you can see again another view. Now, making sketches like this is great for you because you're going to use this for your very own and be able to see all the different views. And that's what makes our painting interesting because, again, we're going to follow excuse me, basic principles of design. And when we're talking about pansies, this was the watercolor. We go from the sketch to the watercolor, of course, which I made. And I did this to show you the 2 top petals are always the same color. All 5 petals may be the same color, but if there are 2 colors or even 2 different shades, the 2 top ones are the same, and then the bottom 3 petals, the ones who have the whiskers, which make them look like little faces, are the ones that may have a different color. There are beautiful combinations even of purples and yellows. The whiskers may be black, they may be brown, they might be dark purple. So there are many, many, many combinations that can be done. And this was one that was done so quickly, but it captured the flower itself. Okay, from the sketch to the pansy, then I wanted to share with you a study which also gives you a step-by-step showing how to put those petals together so that you have a flower that you're happy with. and the different positions, calyx, sepals, buds, more buds, leaves, and groups of leaves, showing a first painting and then a second painting with suggestions for third paintings. This one even has a little scene. And and then there, of course, there are instructions that go with this too. But if you look even at this drawing, you can use the little tint of the pansy to show the different positions and the different directions, which helps us to give contrast and rhythm to our design, which we will work on. And you can see from this how I did the sketch for the watercolor, and I used that design when I painted the watercolor, and then after I finished the watercolor, I used that same design for the tile, the large tile, and of course that can be framed and hung on the wall. That's really neat. Just many ideas. The little picture is one that I did, which just shows how you can use pansies on a design on a different shape of your porcelain. And of course plates are always lovely too. And a plate is one of the easiest ways to design and to show you closely and quickly. So that's what I am going to start now. And when we are talking about basic principles of design, again, this is what helps make our painting be really lovely and accepted as a fine art, which we know it is. We have balance, which we do with our color and our design, and we have dominance and rhythm and values and contrast. And today we'll concentrate a little bit more on the values from the light to dark, because that's what makes our painting so lovely. So without further ado, we'll take this plate and use a little tint to help guide us. And I will use blue because it will show up better for you, even though I'll put yellow in it later. So I will make a little tint going this way, which can show you the direction of that flower. I'll do another, maybe going in this way, straight on, and then perhaps another going in a different direction. Now when I start painting on this, I can change it if I want to. It's my prerogative. And then I will think about rhythm, and so I will maybe have an elongated S. Some call this the Hogarth curve. It's really very lovely and very easy to follow. You just come right on down. And this curve will give us a nice rhythm. Now to make a roughly petal on a flower, and especially pansies, and this is one of the characteristics which make them so lovely, we need to use a larger brush and lots of color on the corner of the brush, and I'll show you how to condition that. We'll go into the corner or the side of the paint with the corner of my brush, and I work that color down, and then when I pull it down, I have what we call a shaded load. That way I can paint and shade at the same time. From this, I will come down here and just gently press back at the metal ferrule or the quill, whichever kind of brush you're using. Is just right. So then I can start at the base of my tint and make a little oval, and I'll just swing, swing, swing. I'm going to come right up to the bottom of that little tint, and I have a little petal right there. It begins to look nice and roughly because I've gone like this rather than straight. See, this looks better than this does. Use a paper towel, wipe that off. It's one of the great things about our painting, again, is that we can wipe it off if we don't like it. Now the little petal that is in back of this one starts again at the bottom of the petal, bottom of the tent, excuse me. And it's going to overlap out here. See, I'm using the corner of my brush back, and there's a little white tint at that, in that area right there. This little area where there's no color. Come right on out here, down. And then the top petal is going to overlap. And I think I may go into a different shade of blue. So there's a contrast. I need a little more oil. Coming down to the top of the tent, and then in back of that petal. So you see this petal now shows up better. Down to the top of the tent. Now we have our two petals out here, and my pansy is really growing. I probably wish I had a chop plate. I'm going to add a little bit of mauve to this top because I like it. That's the best reason. But also it will show up better for you. Now the top petal, which also is roughly, we could use the same kind of a brush stroke. Come right in back of it. Very nice. Out here, same way. So we come up with a lovely pansy. These petals are the same. These three are the same color. Now sometimes you may want to put a little color on it for this firing, for this painting, with some little whiskers on those three. That's what really makes them look like a little pansy. That's what gives them the little faces. The flower that I'm going to put underneath will be a deeper value, and of course our purple colors fire a little bit brighter, so I'm going to use some purple, but I'll also use some of the lighter lavenders. And again, because this flower is underneath, I will just bring my brush under like that. See how this one now looks like it's on top. And again, here's my little tent here, so I will come down here and make a nice roughly, again, using the same strokes, turning my plate rather than me, you know, if I could go like that. But it really is better if you can just kind of turn your piece, come in back of that petal, leave a little white space there for the center. And if you lose it, I'll show you how to get it back. There are two different ways. We wipe it out, and then on the next painting we can add some enamel if we want to. At the top of the tent, again, showing depth, coming in here. We aren't going to see that top petal right there, all of it, so I'm not going to worry about it. It's underneath and behind, which is one of the ways that we keep our values. The flower up here can really be much deeper. We need a little white tint there. And again, I think I would like that one a little bit closer to the edge. So I'll change, put my little tint out there. Now that will give me more room for my petal. So I will use quite a bit of color. And again, just to help me guide myself, I'll come in here with my little tint and know that my petal is coming out there. So let's come back now and make another little petal with the ruffles. This is the bottom. And then with the same color, remember these three petals are always the same color and usually the same shade. And then at the top of the tent, again, we can come in and help form this petal back here, which is nice. And back, and again, here. Now, we have our 3 flowers, and they're going in different directions, this way, this way, this way. So immediately we get contrast, and we get a nice flow. Again, I think I'm going to have to move this one up here a little bit. And I'll add some blue to that to tie in this one, and perhaps make just 3 petals and have the little calyx come right onto that. This will be a nice little bud, a nice big fat bud actually. And we need to balance that. Again, balance is one of our basic principles of design. We can have another bud over here. And then this will give us a nice flow. And then if we want to, we could add other small buds. I don't think we're really going to need it. I'm going to pick up another larger brush and go into some of my greens and show you how we can, maybe I better add a little yellow in that center first. How we can frame in this flower, or these flowers. One of the ways that we could do is just to add our leaves, fire it, and then come back and add background. I wanted to share with you how we could bring out the edge of the ruffles by adding background first, and then I'll pick up another plate, which I've already fired, and show you how to add the leaves with that background. Besides, backgrounds are sometimes a little scary to my students, and they think it's so difficult, but it really isn't. If you use a large enough brush, this I find is one of the things that that is difficult for most of my students to do. They think they have to have a tiny little brush, when really the larger brush you can use, the better off you're going to be. So we'll come in with some of our lighter greens, which is going to be a background for our foliage. And we'll just, and the brush stroke I'm using is kind of a criss cross. And that is a way of getting a softness and a feeling of leaves and behind. Come back with some more of our chartreuse or our yellow greens, which is lovely. Not going to worry about stems this time. We'll just do that on another painting. I do want to put the little calyx on up here. Another little calyx here. And I'm thinking about where I want my leaves next time. Because see, I can come back and add, and that'll make a nice backdrop for it. Right away, I will add some depth. I'm going to clean out my brush a little bit and bring some of the darker values of greens in here. And again, you see how it brings out the petal. Okay, we'll pretend that I didn't ruffle it enough, and I need to make it look more ruffly. So I can bring my brush in and just swing it in like that. And see, it gives depth and position to that petal. We can, in other words, we can rearrange it. And sometimes when we really look at it, it really needs to be rearranged. That one could be brought in a little bit. And of course, it's light enough, I'm not going to worry about it. I can come back next time. See how I brought it into here? So that you, again, can really see the shape of the petals. Bring a little bit out in here. And here. And with my brush, I am crisscrossing. crossing, leaving some little airy areas so that you have a feeling of a filter, feathery, blended stroke and area. Now, if we wanted to make this, knock my brushes off here, like the stem coming back in here. Let's see what I've got on here. I could bring that stem through here, come right through my flower. And I can wipe that out, or maybe even make another petal back of it. What I'm trying to do is show you how you could make a flower that you're looking at the back of it, so it looks like it's just unfolded. And I think I've got purple on all my brushes, so we'll try another one. Use some green, a little darker value, and bring that calyx right down in on that flower. See that's better now. Then I can pick up my little wipeout tool and wipe right down through. We can use a little green up in here too. Comes right out of the top of that calyx there. See, this helps to bring out the shape of it, and then bring that right over the petals. There we go. See how simple that was? Now you've got the flower in behind the stem. That helps too. I covered up the little tent here on this one, so I really need to come back and wipe this one out too. So I'll just be real bold and reshape this one, and maybe even bring some white up in here. See, again, which gives a nice ruffly effect. See what color we've got here. Yep. See, when I pulled back on that color, I could really zoom in and bring a little ruffle there. And pretend you want more ruffles. On this one up here, you can take a wipeout tool and use the same general stroke that we had here and pull in like that. Let's do the same on this one. See how you can really ruffle that. And because we have background here, we have a nice softness on the edge. So I can come out here and really emphasize this. But I wouldn't want to leave it just like this. I need to soften it again. So I would take my brush that I was painting my flower with and just pull down. See, it's almost dry. Not quite dry enough. There it is. And I'll just pull down toward the little tint. And this is the way that we get lovely ruffles and a nice little area there. Turn my plate around, pull up, pull, pull, pull. And here, do the same thing. Wipe out again for our tent, and then make our little ruffly edges here. Again, use this brush, pull back toward the tent. You can use the corner of the brush, press it and pull, press and pull, so that you have a nice, lovely, ruffled edge. And it's light enough that if you wanted to make these petals a dark purple next time, which would be lovely, you could do that. And you can, now we could fire it like this, or we can come back and add more stems if we would like. Just a little one there. Just going to show a little bit. And then you could just go ahead and fire this. Wipe off the areas you don't want. And you see you can have something that makes a very lovely first firing and gives you enough area and enough design so you can see. Isn't that great? Now, okay, now we're going to fire it, and just to save time for you so that we can get as much as we can in the short time that we have together, I fired another plate. Okay, there are no two we could ever make exactly alike, which makes our painting very lovely and unique and original. So here we are. That was quick, wasn't it? All fired, ready to go. Excuse me. The blue on this is weak, and I really feel that I'd like to make it darker, especially after I made a darker blue on the first painting over here on this other plate. But you can see how I feathered out the background, and now it's all fired, so I can just go ahead and add more color. If I don't like it, I can just take it off. Instead of putting a blue one up here, this is elderberry purple, which fired in a gorgeous, almost a ruby shade. Purples and rubies and blues are lovely. And we'll get this one going to show you. I'm going to wipe this off, but I'd like to share something with you. A way that you could tie the whole design in together. And this is a good time to do it. You could put a band on here. And of course we have little banders, which are neat. I've even put a smaller plate inside, put a pencil around it. And then you don't have to worry about making it even, because we can put little scrolls around it. I just happened to think about this. This might be kind of fun for you to do. See how you could add that band right in here, which again, what it's doing is tying it in. Okay, we could use any color that you have on your flower or on your leaves. Bring some of that color out into the band if you have a band, and try different colors to see which you might like best. See, here we have nice choices: greens, blues, lavenders. And since lavender is one of my very favorite colors, that's my choice. And of course, color is a very personal thing, so we just kind of do that. I kind of like that. All right, now to shade, we're going to use the same strokes, but we will be much more bold with our color. And we'll start with the darkest one first, which happens to be this little guy down here that has some really bright purples. Doesn't show bright purple when you are firing until after it's fired. So you will have to, we'll have to pretend. And again, we'll just be real bold and make our color come right out. While it's still wet, I'm going to add the whiskers. We don't want green whiskers, so I'll clean this out. You can use a detail brush to put this on too. It might be easier for you. I think mine flipped on the floor, but I've got another one here. Right, we can use black. I'll use black because that will show up a lot better. But you could use a dark purple on this too. And the whiskers come out from the little tent, and they are almost solid, but sometimes they are just little streaks. So I like to start like that, and then you can just streak it out with your brush. Turn my plate, come along that little white tent, streak, streak, streak. And now on the bottom here with my little whiskers. This is really the way they look. And those lovely little pansies we had. So now we have the whiskers on here. Okay, if you do not get it dark enough on this painting, you can do it on another firing. In other words, don't be afraid to fire your pieces as many times as you need to get the result that you want. So many times I'll say, oh, I don't know, I can't do it all on this firing, so, fire it again. It's good hard china, it's going to stand it all right. So now we have a flower that really looks like a pansy because we've got all those little whiskers on and they're lovely. Let's go on to our next flower, which can be a little bit lighter in value. We'll leave some little areas that are lighter. They look almost like little turnovers on the petals. You know how to make a turnover on a petal? Okay, come out here like that. And then come in underneath. Like a little S stroke like that. See, now it looks like it's turned over. You can do that on any of these. They're very lovely. Wipe that one off. Again, just a few little strokes out here. And then we'll go back in to our whiskers. And on this one, maybe I'll just make them a little bit lighter. Not lighter in value, but a little thinner perhaps, more airy. Now we can't see the whiskers on this side, so we'll have to let that one go. It's underneath. And remember that anything that's underneath or behind is going to be darker. And this is when we talk about values, what we must remember. Let's add some more here. And this is the one that had the little stem that went right over the flower. While we're at it, let's add a little bud there and come down in here. This could be blue also. Oh, we got another one over there. Okay, we'll make that one blue. I don't think I'm going to clean off my brush. I'll just go directly into the blue, which will give me a little different value than I have. And so I'll use it on those two top petals. Remember, these two top ones are always the same in value. And by pulling down and keeping this roughly, you're going to have a nice, lovely petal. And back, on the edge. And we can leave this one even lighter if you would like, which would give you contrast. Or we'll say you wanted to add some of the lavenders to this. You could do that. We could put it on the bottom 3 petals if you'd like. See, so now you see it all blue, and then let's add some lavenders to it. When you look at the pansies growing, it's just amazing, the gorgeous, beautiful colors. See, those are kind of fun too. Ties it all in together, again with my favorite color. Now let's add a little whiskers on those and see what we come up with. Again, just lightly. Here, now another way that we'll just, again, see we had just background on here, so we need to add some leaves and accent our calyx. Put some greens on it here. Green, 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 add a little more. Blue, that's what we were going to do, some more blue on this bud down here. And what it's really doing is balancing it. So we'll add that. That's what it does, gives a lovely blue. And then if I want to balance this up in here, I could even add some blue out here in the background. See what it'll do? Give it a little different look, which is kind of fun. Forgot the green calyx on my little flower here. So we'll quickly do that. Now you can see how you can probably add more leaves. And this time we can shape them. It's such a great opportunity and fun to paint and watch all these little miracles that we have out here in nature. It's a great, great teacher. See, you can say, well, how do I know where to put leaves? Okay, we already, remember we worked out a design on that watercolor, didn't we? We worked out watercolor, we worked out designs with the sketches, with ideas. And we know that we want to balance this. And when you are looking at pansies in a pansy bed, you do not see all those separate little leaves, do you? You see those gorgeous flowers. The leaves are an accessory. So are stems, so is the background. See, so anytime that any of these begin to take over and you see those first, then you need to go back and say, oh, I gotta do something about that. If you put leaves on lightly, then you're going to have a shadow effect, which is fun and lovely. And we can do things like that up here. So we have more of a feeling of foliage. You'll say, oh, what if I lost my tint? You know, it could be, you could do little scrolls around here. You could use gold with lavender is gorgeous. You could come back and use some enamel. And very quickly, I'll just pick up this plate. Now this has not had a third firing on it either, but we lost the little tint on this one down here. And so I'll just show you, I think. Let me see. I'll try using some enamel here. And this is mixed up, so it's just about like toothpaste. Stands up, or 7-minute frosting. And then you can just pick it up on your brush, and it's a real gob of paint. I mean, you just pick it up, lay it down, and if it's too heavy, like this one is on this side, you can take your brush handle and just pull through it. Or wipe it off and do it over. See, that's better. I was hurrying. That's why. And you can bring out the petals, edges of petals, and make them very roughly with enamel too, which is lovely. I won't go over the whole thing, but just to give you an idea of what can be done. Because I want to, again, we were talking about values. I would truly like to show you about that. If it's too heavy, you can come back with your brush and skinny it down, see, like that. So you can clean it up, really, and make it really lovely. So that's enamel. And then this is what we were talking about with values, which hopefully you can just have so much enjoyment. And this is a tile that I made up for you, for my students. And you are my student today. First painting, if this was a dewdrop that was lying in this position on a leaf, you could just wipe out off of your green. If it's a dewdrop that is hanging down on a petal, we'll say, it can be like this. And I made it large so I could exaggerate it and show you, because when we're talking about values, we're talking about from light to dark. We have highlights, we have halftones, we have a shaded halftone, we have reflected light, and we have shadows. So I'll show you on this one, especially because I think it would probably show up better for you. I made the dewdrop. I wiped out the dewdrop in the shape that you see with my brush in wet paint. And then I took a clean brush and I wiped out a highlight similar to the shape of the dewdrop. And then I took my little detail brush or the corner of my brush and I wiped out a reflected light. This is what we mean by reflected light. That light which is on an object that is underneath. It's bouncing back up. See, if you were doing a portrait, you would have, we can do the same thing. Highlight, you know, where the light is hitting. Halftones, where the light's receding. Reflected light, where the light's bouncing up from whatever's underneath. And then shadows. Some have more shadows than others, of course. So we have some of our lovely lavender, and I'll just bring this out a little bit. On the second painting, then you could bring color in behind that dewdrop. See how it's bringing it out? And some call this a cast shadow also. It's really underneath, and it is casting a shadow. There would be a little bit of cast shadow on this side, but not as dark as this because my light is coming from this way. You can tell that because of the highlight. But there would be a little bit. But the deepest shadow would be right here. And the little area here would be darker also. That's our shaded halftone. And then we have the halftone there. Our highlight is left the way it is. So you can see what a beautiful dewdrop. Okay, this same identical thing, same identical values are used on any rounded subject. Or if you want to have a dewdrop on a leaf or on a petal, we could have put one on a pansy petal, but again, this is easier for you to see, so that you can utilize this and put that on your piece. Now, some are really concerned about yellow because they say, oh, yellow is so hard to use. And so very quickly, I'll just take this tile and show you how we can, the color, the reason that you may have some trouble with your yellow, and how we can actually use those colors together. So yellow is almost transparent. So rather than using just the yellow, I add other color right away. Yellow, maybe a little bit of this yellow-brown, or that might be like ochre or different shades that you might have. There are many, many shades. But what I'm talking about is a light, medium, and dark. And if we use that light color, see, it doesn't show up too well, but if we immediately add some of the darker value to it, you see the effect that you get? Well, see, it wasn't very smart. I should have made a little yellow tint here first. There we go. Okay, now let's make a little petal out here. And see, by having those yellow shades mixed in with some of that middle value and the dark value, you immediately get shading. And then you can pull back toward the tint to get the effect of a ruffle. And then we can add some more behind it, that little tint right there, and start at the top of the tint, ruffle, 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 and with yellow often you see dark brown for the whiskers rather than purple, although I've seen purple whiskers on yellow pansies, which have been beautiful. Now this is a big one, sort of like I did with that watercolor, but again you can see clearly. Swoop in, swoop in, swoop in, and then pull, 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 pull. And you see you can get a lovely ruffled effect. Pull, 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 pull. See? A little bit of green. Well, we better come back here into this. A little bit of green maybe up in the tint here. Wipe out for that tint so it's a little bit neater. You can use a clean brush too, but a little wipeout tool is really great. And then we'll add our brown paint for the whiskers. And you can see how neat that is. So you can make it almost solid if you'd like. Or we can just whip it out and make little streaks. Oh, you're gorgeous. Aren't they fun? It's really been an experience to study these flowers. And again, I just never cease to be amazed at the miracles that we see when, as I said, when we are working with nature in that tiny little bud that opens up into a gorgeous flower. And again, just want you to know, every day is a gift. Don't forget it. Don't forget to tell somebody today you love them. And I love you.